This week on Christian World News, Egypt's Christians get a special gift, courtesy of the government. Why Egypt's president not only helped fund this new cathedral, but also came to the dedication.
And protecting Syria's Christians as the U.S. plans to pull out its troops. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo warns Turkey, hands off the Christians and the Kurds.
Plus, after years of revival, China's church is under assault. Why President Xi Jinping sees Christians as an enemy of the state. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Egypt's Coptic Christians celebrated Orthodox Christmas this week. Part of that celebration included the dedication of the Middle East's largest Coptic cathedral.
It was quite impressive. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was there for the big reveal. So was my colleague Chris Mitchell, who has this story from Cairo.
At Christmas Mass, Egypt's Coptic Pope inaugurated the Nativity of the Christ Cathedral, with the president joining the celebration. The building is a gift to the church from Egypt's President el-Sisi. He commissioned the construction of the cathedral in 2017 to be part of the new administrative capital outside of Cairo. And he said he wanted the church, the new church, to be a message of peace and love to the world. Joel Rosenberg led a delegation of evangelicals here for the dedication.
I think what we've seen here is historic. I really think it's a game changer that a Sunni Arab Muslim president of the world's largest Arab country has built a church, the largest in the Middle East, and given as a gift to the Christians of Egypt. We've never seen anything like it in all of history, and I think President Sisi is sending a message not just to his own people, but to all Muslims. Muslims and Christians can live in unity and coexistence. That's an extraordinary development.
In a tweet, President Trump praised el-Sisi for moving his country to a more inclusive future. Johnny Moore agrees, seeing him leading a new spirit movement in the Middle East.
You know, there's a verse in the Bible, that says what the enemy meant for evil, God uses for good. And the horrific terrorism of the last decade, at its height in 2014 and 2015 with ISIS, what it has done is it has created fertile ground for a new spirit of tolerance to rise across the region, and you have leaders who are facilitating that.
Reverend Andrea Zaki, president of the Protestant churches here, says the Egypt portrayed in the media is not the whole story.
I think Egypt is moving. Changes is not like a computer. Click, you have a new screen in a second. Culture, customs, nations, economy, all of these are taking long time, but you can feel and see and touch the changes.
The group also met with Pope Tadros, the head of the largest Christian church in the Middle East, and with evangelical leaders. They shared the same story.
And the answer that they give us time and time again repeatedly is we have challenges, but the situation is so much better than it was under Sadat, under Mubarak, under the Muslim Brotherhood for sure. We're encouraged, but we're going to keep pressing for even more change.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the new Church of the Nativity, Cairo.
And just days after that dedication, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited the cathedral. Afterwards, he sat down with our Chris Mitchell, who asked the secretary what he had to say to Middle East Christians.
What about the Christians in the region? They have an appeal that they won't be eradicated, that Christianity won't be eradicated. What's your message to those Christians?
That America is with them. Christianity is at the heart of the history of this place here in the Middle East. All you got to do is grab a Bible and read the places and the names. Christians have been central to the Middle East. We want to make sure that they continue to have opportunities and freedom, and for Christian churches to grow alongside churches of other faiths as well.
Secretary Pompeo also says the United States stands for religious freedom. Everywhere, American diplomacy is at work.
As the Trump administration pursues its plan to pull U.S. troops out of Syria, all eyes are on Turkey. America's NATO ally is anxious to rid its neighbor of Kurdish fighters. And it's pushing back, by the way, against U.S. concerns about protecting the Kurds.
Now, Syria's Christians fear what a Turkish invasion will mean for them when the U.S. leaves. CBN's Jennifer Wishon explains.
For President Donald Trump, getting U.S. troops out of Syria fits neatly into his America First foreign policy.
But I don't want to be in Syria forever. It's sand, and it's death.
But as the U.S. prepares to draw down, Assyrian Christians fear they'll be wiped out as Turkey eyes a new opening to go after its foe, the Kurds. In an open letter to the world, Syriac Assyrian Christians write, 100,000 Syriac and other Christians will be killed or driven away if Turkey invades. Turkish jihadists hunted down the Christians and Yazidis of Afrin in northwest Syria. They will do the same again, but at a much wider scale. They're referring to the ongoing cross-border operation into the Kurdish city of Afrin, launched by Turkey in March. And it's not just the Turkish military. Christians fear Turkey's Islamist agents, who have no respect for religions outside of Islam. Aykan Erdemir is a former member of Turkey's parliament and current senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
Will we see jihadists coming back, enslaving religious minorities, killing them, destroying churches, talking about the extinction of an ancient way of life? We're talking about Christianity in its cradle, Yazidism in its homeland, being completely destroyed.
It's interesting because just last month, H.R. 390 became law, which says the State Department shall identify threats of persecution, genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes against members of Iraq or Syrian minority religious or ethnic groups. Does that, what's going on with the U.S. and the threat that you've just laid out, does that contradict this?
I think we're sending mixed signals, certainly.
Turkey has a growing notorious reputation when it comes to religious freedom. In its latest report, the U.S. designated Turkey a Tier 2 country of concern when it comes to allowing Christians and other religious minorities to practice their faiths freely. Still, President Trump is standing firm on his decision to bring U.S. troops home. What's the solution here? What can be done?
In the Middle East, there's no such thing as vacuum. The moment you create a vacuum, you can be sure that Iran will be there, their proxies will be there. You can be sure that there will be Sunni jihadists there and their patrons as well. And also Russia.
One option would be for the U.S. to recognize Kurdistan as a nation. But like everything in the Middle East, Erdemir says that's complicated because large populations of Kurds are spread across a number of countries, including Iran. For now, it appears U.S. policy is putting 2,000 years of Christian history and tradition at risk. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Up next, millions of Chinese have turned to Christ in recent decades. Now, China's President Xi Jinping views the growing church as a threat to the Communist Party.
The United Kingdom is sending a Christian back to his home country of Pakistan, where he fears he will face persecution. Religious persecution forced Asher Simpson to seek asylum in the UK 14 years ago. His pastor says he's been a member in good standing at his church for 10 years. Now, his asylum claim has been rejected, and Asher is being deported. His brother says that Asher will be targeted by Islamists if he is sent back to Pakistan.
The European Court of Human Rights has ruled against a German homeschooling family in what is being called a huge setback for parents' rights. The court said that German authorities did not violate the Wunderlich family's fundamental rights. They took the couple's 4 children back in 2013 in a 2013 raid because the children were being homeschooled. The children were eventually returned. The family's attorney says Thursday's ruling, quote, disregards the rights of parents all over Europe.
The judgment has upheld the blanket ban that exists in Germany against homeschooling. It's a blanket ban that is backed up with criminal penalties. It really ignores the fundamental parental rights guaranteed by international treaties.
The Wunderlichs will appeal the decision to the Grand Chamber of the European Court of Human Rights.
Well, after years of revival, China's church is under assault. Millions of Chinese have turned to Christ in recent decades. Now, China's President Xi views the growing church as a threat to the Communist Party.
In fact, police are raiding churches and arresting pastors. I recently visited China to learn more about the ideology that's fueling a widespread crackdown against Christians. For the last 20 years, CBN News has documented the explosive growth in China's so-called underground or house church movement as millions in this officially atheistic nation converted to Christianity. Experts say what's been happening in China is part of an unprecedented revival that has practically touched every corner of the country, leading some to predict that China could become the world's most Christian nation by 2030. But this man wants to prevent that. Since taking power in 2012, China's President Xi Jinping has ordered authorities to shut down any house church not under communist government control.
Massive new wave of persecution has been happening in China.
Bob Fu, with U.S.-based China Aid, is documenting the widespread crackdown.
I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of churches were shut down, pastors were being arrested, and the prayer meeting were being raided.
Pastor Jing Mingri knows harsh tactics firsthand. In August, Jin, who led Zion Church, the largest unregistered congregation in Beijing, refused a government order to install closed-circuit surveillance cameras in the sanctuary. Weeks later, authorities outlawed the 1,500-member church and banned him from preaching.
It is probably the largest incident of the government using public power to apply pressure on a house church in the past 10 years, and it's still going on today.
Bob Fu says the crackdown is part of President Xi's ambition of sinicizing Christianity with Chinese characteristics and insisting that Christians pledge political loyalty to him and the Communist Party.
He is really wanting to take China to the Chairman Mao's old kind of path by exercising more political control and mind control, ideological kind of sinicization into the Communist Party's ideology.
Andrew Nathan of Columbia University says the government views Chinese Christians like dry kindling that could spark a political uprising against the government with the help of outside influence.
They think that foreign forces, the United States, missionaries, and so forth, would like to spark up this tinder. So they don't see it only in a domestic context, they see it in a strategic context as well.
As authorities tear down and burn crosses, destroy Bibles, and replace images of Jesus Christ with posters of the Chinese president, Huang He, one of China's most prominent pastors arrested this month, boldly declared that Xi's godlike status was incompatible with the Christian faith and vowed to disobey all laws that go against the Bible. Now, after years of enjoying relative freedom from government interference, Christians like this woman, whose husband is under house arrest, worries about the future climate for China's Christians.
It's painful. The government says that we have religious freedom, but really there is no freedom at all.
Wow. George, there's a group of Christians in Vietnam who are being persecuted.
That's right.
Who are they and why?
Well, they're called the Hmong people, and there are about 4 to 5 million Hmong, primarily in Southeast Asia, the largest concentration in China, but also a large concentration in Vietnam. And what's happening in the northeastern highlands of Vietnam, there's a tremendous revival amongst the Hmong people, and the church and the government authorities in the northeastern part of the country are cracking down on them severely.
George, how did the gospel ever even get to this remote area?
It's really incredible. From the 1980s, the organization called the Far East Broadcasting Corporation, a radio mission that was based in Manila, they started communicating the gospel in the Hmong language.
Wow.
And so many people, almost 40% of Vietnam's Hmong today, have turned their lives over to Jesus Christ.
So that's the good news.
That's the good news.
Great story.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank
George. Up next, as a teenager sold for sex, she killed a man. Now the governor is setting her free. How her case sheds light on the plight of tens of thousands of girls trapped in the sex trade.
And welcome back to the broadcast. A teen trafficking victim serving a life sentence for murder is now looking forward to freedom. Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam granted clemency to 30-year-old Cynthia Brown. Now she is crediting the Lord for giving her, quote, His saving grace and a second chance. Brown's lawyers say she was forced into the sex trade when she was only 16. That's when this man, Johnny Allen, bought her for sex. She said she feared for her life and shot him. She was sentenced to at least 51 years in prison. By many accounts, Brown made changes in prison deciding to follow the Lord, and is now close to finishing her bachelor's degree from Lipscomb, a Christian university. At a hearing in May, she explained,
"It was so necessary to change. It wasn't so much of a choice, but I had to."
Cynthia's transformation is nothing short of a miracle. To watch her go from where she was to where she is the most amazing thing.
Anti-trafficking groups like Exodus Cry, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, and Shared Hope applauded the governor's move. And Southern Baptist leader Russell Moore called Brown's clemency an important development. Brown is expected to be released from prison in August after serving 15 years behind bars. Terrific story.
Wow. Well, for children escaping from the horror of human trafficking, there are no easy answers. Few centers can give them the treatment that they need, but that may soon change in Texas.
A new facility there hopes to become a model for the future. Heather Sells brings us that story.
This shelter is set to open in 2018 and will provide care for 48 children, just a fraction of those who need it here in Texas.
The need is overwhelming. Trafficking survivor Tony McKinley will work as a therapist for the refuge when it opens.
I can't tell you how many phone calls I get. I just got one a couple of days ago of a law enforcement asking me, what do you know that's open? What's available? Where can I take her?
As the officer overseeing trafficking cases in Austin, Sergeant Kevin Covington often asks those same questions.
There's different things that we can try, but outside of their having the refuge and then put them on a plane and flying them back home to wherever they're from, there's no real good answer.
Just how many children are trafficked here? A new study by the University of Texas puts the number at 79,000. It's a stunning number, considering that national estimates overall reach the tens of thousands. Regardless of the total, however, there's simply not enough beds, let alone treatment facilities for these incredibly wounded kids. And that can feed right into the cycle.
The more that we find these kids and don't have a place to put them, a place for them to get healing, the more that they're not going to trust us.
Meet the mind behind the refuge, Brooke Crowder, who says God downloaded the plans to her.
I kept saying, why are we not doing this? And then it became, well, then why am I not doing this?
Right now, Texas has just 20 or so beds for its thousands of survivors. It's hard to believe, but Crowder admits
it's just an issue we don't really want to talk about. It's dark. It's hard to hear about.
And even harder to do something about.
It's a pretty complex response that is required. It's also quite costly. And so and there's really not a model out there that people can say, okay, we'll build this here.
The refuge model keeps the price down. It builds strategic partnerships with those already helping young people.
We're not bearing the cost of our on-site charter school. The University of Texas is doing that through their wonderful school program. We're not bearing the cost of the medical care. We're partnering with a federally qualified healthcare clinic.
There's also help with animal therapy and other services. Each survivor here will receive a customized care plan and likely stay for at least a year, if not longer. Crowder hopes this rural setting will provide both a sense of safety and a feeling of community that will take away any desire to run. McKinley wishes she would have had such an option. Her first trafficking experience came in elementary school. Later, as a teenager, a retired police officer kept her in the trade.
I completely trusted him. And I also desired a father figure so bad, like so bad, that I didn't question anything, even though I was afraid.
Both McKinley and Crowder hope the refuge will give survivors the ability to relearn the very basics of human relationships. Their biggest goal, helping victims release their shame and understand how to trust.
The type of people who buy young adults and children are doctors, police officers, lawyers, teachers. If you can imagine trying to process hundreds of rapes, hundreds of rapes, because these girls are being raped, 10, 15 times a day, 6, 7 days a week, some of them for years. It's a lot. And that's why it takes so much. That's why so many people don't take this on. They don't build places like this because it's hard.
If the refuge can get it right here, they would like to replicate this model in other cities in Texas and eventually in other states, providing care for the thousands of children who so desperately need it. Reporting in Central Texas, Heather Sell, CBN News.
The popular YouVersion Bible app says their Bible plan got over 1 million new subscriptions at the start of the new year. The company says that the uptick of subscribers on January 1st represents a 62% increase from last year. The Bible plan allows users to pair daily passages from the Bible with audio, video, or devotional content. The plans are available in more than 50 languages and help guide people in reading through the Bible over the course of 90 days, 6 months, or a year. And George, that is quite an uptick.
It's incredible. Yeah, I have it. I mean, that's what I use every day. I mean, it's always good to have the actual Word of God.
Yeah,
but you know what? The last time I actually opened a physical Bible, it's been a while.
Really?
Because, yeah, this is so, there's so much easier.
My phone's always dying, so that's my problem.
Yeah, well,
okay. Anyway.
Good news that you're starting off the new year with...
Yes, the Bible app.
Exactly. Okay, folks, that is it for this week's edition of Christian World News.
Until next week, from all of us here, goodbye and God bless you.